I'm totally in charge of the horse's routine. But we don't have such a wide choice as Westerners, with different kinds of feed, vitamins, and so on. It's no use saying, give them lucerne hay, if we only have meadow hay. I do enjoy the sport, but I worry a lot as well. Maybe I do it because I love horses. It becomes a passion. In the West, a millionaire gentleman can suddenly decide to put a team together and go to competitions, no matter what the cost. My horses belong to the cooperative farm. I'll never have enough money to compete with my own four in hand. I'm not a factory owner. The cooperative buys the carriages, the horses, everything. They pay me and they own my house. We do win money abroad, but that goes to the sports organization, which arranges our travel and takes care of the foreign currency. The prize money goes to them. We just get our daily expenses, and that's more than enough. The Hungarian style of driving is quite different from the Western. The English put collars on their horses. The Hungarians use a breast harness. Traditionally, the English drive with all four reins in one hand, a four-in hand. We Hungarians buckle the left pair and the right pair together and hold two reins in each hand. In Hungary, the carriage horse type is usually the Lipizzaner, but I don't like them much. I prefer the quick half-bred horses. They are part Hungarian trotter, part thoroughbred. Tourists bring in half our income. They come to see our horses and our Hungarian grey cattle. In the season, we give 2 or 3 displays a day, and last year we had 60,000 visitors. Anyone who thinks it's easy to get 4 horses to work together should have a go themselves. It's real work. Strength is important, of course, but you need more than that. To get your horses to go the way you want, you need brains, quick hands, and good reflexes. In competition, we Hungarians don't do so well in the presentation and dressage. We lose penalty points compared to the Westerners. So we have to try and catch up in the marathon and the obstacle driving. People criticize us for being too tough on our horses, but today, if you want to win, you really have to take risks. You need courage and some Hungarian flair. This year I'm driving a completely new team, so I'm not likely to be a world champion again, but I hope I'll be among the medals.
In the United States, interest in the sport is growing rapidly after a late start. Enthusiasm and attention to detail make up for a lack of competitive experience. Among the top drivers is one of the few women competing at international level.
In Europe anyway, most of the team drivers are men, and most of the men have the money in Europe, and it is a fairly expensive sport. I also quite honestly feel that most men don't like the having their wives be the main competitor in the family. I saw Cynthia Hayden from England driving up in Toronto at the Royal Winter Fair, and I was so excited by the splendor and the brass and the polish and the patent leather and the glamour of it all that I immediately decided I had to start driving a team.
Thank you.
I liked the idea of team driving. It was fun and it gives you a high. And it does take a certain amount of skill, but it doesn't require the same athletic ability that riding does, especially high-level riding. And I think you can achieve a fair amount of success starting when you're grown up. I use a mixed pack of horses. I don't know anybody else who's driving 3 breeds of horses in their team, and I suppose it's not the thing to do. I have to have horses that have the right dispositions for me, and that means that they have to be quite tractable, not pull, and they have to wait for me when I'm in trouble. And that's perhaps one of the differences between me and some of the men drivers. They care more about the looks of the horses and the fact that they match than they do about the disposition. I believe this sport requires less ability from the horse, but more endurance and more teamwork between the animals, and certainly a very great degree of teamwork between the horses and the driver. That is the challenge of the sport, the achievement of getting 4 horses, sound, fit, conditioned, and trained and responsive to do the same job at the same time. The other countries are very strong. The Hungarians and the Dutch are particularly strong at the moment. But we hope this year that the Americans will have a very good showing. We have Bill Long, who's a star and has the ability to win a medal individually, I think, and can certainly put out a very good marathon.
To me, this is a real challenge. I work very hard at it, and I try very hard to do well at it, and my dressage is still needs a lot more, but we're working at that. And I think someday that, as far as the United States goes, that we're going to have some of the best drivers in the world there.
Bill Long manages a farm in New Jersey, owned by top businessman Finn Casperson, and drives his team of Holstein horses. He's the most successful team driver in the States, and his aggressive style in the marathon took him to 7th place in the 1984 World Championships.
Okay, Billy, if you want to take the mirror out, Karina, you want to take Meister? My horse used to be so stiff and they wouldn't bend, and then with the single driving, they really started to work and enjoy it.
in their last event. It was the first dressage test that I have ever won, and I know it's because of the single driver.
Roscoe, come. Come. Roscoe, come. Come. Good boy. Good.
I have one lead horse that doesn't like the water at all. So I'm trying to get him over that. You know, wherever I can find a piece of water to put him in, I'll put him in it.
Come. Come.
He knows you're behind him, and he knows that you can reach him with that whip if he's not doing what you want him to. And then he responds when you get back in the team. You say his name, and he says, oh, he hasn't figured out yet that I can't get to him.
Ooh, it's too mucky. Oh. Oh, good boy. Oh.
I don't know how to explain it, but the horses really do respond a lot better after driving pairs and singles. Then you put them in the 4. I train hazards usually once a week. I have hazards on the farm that have 14 or 15 openings. They have to go in the opening. I want them to go in.
Good boy. Come. Come.
I try to really settle them because they know that something's going to happen, maybe into or halfway through it. It's a very dangerous sport, but if you let that bother you, you may as well quit. A lot of times in the water, the horses have a tendency, they go in and they jump, like jump forward, like hopping in the water, and that's what happens. They usually get a trace in between their legs, or the wheelers jump over their lead bars, and that's when you're in big trouble. You almost have to stop most of the time to get them off. It's dangerous if you make it dangerous. If you get too gung-ho and a little bit too crazy with the horses sometimes, then you've made it yourself. You've done it yourself. It usually happens in a hazard if you come in a little too fast and you don't catch quite the right angle you want to be at. All it has to do is hit that post hard enough, and there's no way you can stay on. You go. I've been nervous. There's been some hazards where I've thought twice about it. But when you're with the horses, I feel really relaxed and at ease with them because I know my horses. But now there was another team and they asked me to get up and drive a team that I didn't know, then it would make me nervous. There are horses that have a tendency to take off with you once in a while if something spooks them bad enough. When you start canning your horses, like in these hazards, when we let them go, you're hoping that they respond to you and want to come back and not just keep on going. Because it's a very hard thing to get 4 horses stopped if they don't want to stop. My father had a saying, like he always told me, he says, I don't care what you do, Bill, but never let go of those horses. You can ride on that carriage as fast as they can run. There's some cases where there's 4 horses are going with it and they're coming to a rock wall and they're going to go through it or over it or through the trees. Then it's time probably to bail out. You got to have that win attitude, because or else you just paddle along out there and coming in out of 25 teams, coming 25th, because you won't be a winner unless you have that attitude, I think.
Come on! Good boy. Come. That's my baby. I never had a team this fast, and I think that'll pay off. The boss is sure excited about it. We took 7th place the last World Championships, and we'd like to better that anyway if we could. But I feel anybody who winds up in the top 10 in the World Championships, we've done something.
The American team fly to England for 5 days of intensive competition at Ascot Racecourse. Each driver must bring 5 horses, 2 carriages, several grooms, and tons of equipment.
The Europeans have competitions almost every weekend. It becomes second nature to you. You're competing every weekend. It's your whole existence. You don't panic anymore. No one show is very, very important. Velstra or Bowman, they compete in maybe 16 competitions a year. And we're lucky if we have 4. For us, each one is a big deal. That's difficult. It makes it much harder for us to be good competitors.
Over 40 competitors from 13 different countries gather in the arena for the opening of the World 4-in-Hand Carriage Driving Championships. The competition begins with the presentation, a meticulous assessment of the cleanliness, condition, and general appearance of each team. Prince Philip enters the ring, driving a team of the Queen's ceremonial horses immaculately prepared in the royal stables. Five judges inspect every detail of the turnout.
They're checking to see that the harness is strong, that it's supple, that it's clean, and that it fits correctly. The condition of the horses, the shoeing of the horses, the carriage, of course, it's the same. They're checking to see that it's in a safe condition. And then he checks your grooms to see they're smart. And then he stands back and looks at the overall thing to see that it all blends in together. Money does come to it, because if you can hire extra grooms to clean, if you can buy the best horses, buy the best harness, buy the best vehicle, of course money comes into it. I love personally to watch at an international event, watch the presentation, because it's seeing the different breeds of horses from different countries, the different uniforms or the different outfits from various countries, and I find this very interesting myself.
After every stage of the competition, the placings are calculated on a basis of penalty points. At the end of the presentation, none of the leading drivers have lost more than 1 or 2 marks.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the first of the teams for the dressage section, competition A, and this is team number 6, individual from Great Britain, His Royal Highness the Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh.
Prince Philip has been a member of many successful British teams since 1975, but this time he's competing as an individual. He salutes the judges before starting on the 11 separate movements of the dressage test.
I think Prince Philip is remarkable. To be able to compete as well as he does with as little time as he has to devote to the sport is an absolute marvel. He is very dedicated, and I think he spends a great deal of time thinking about it. And I'm a great believer in mind control and in being able to practice when you're a long way from the horses. And I suspect, whether he does it consciously or not, that he practices a lot in his mind.
Prince Philip always does a very accurate test. He's quite noted for it, and his horses, especially the leaders, his own bred horses, have got wonderful paces. This is a big problem. If you get horses fit enough to do 18 miles cross-country, will they be cool enough and have the right temperament to do a calm dressage? It is difficult remembering movements because you're concentrating so hard on your horses. And when you've got 4 horses to concentrate on, people get what they call mental blocks. They forget what they've done, not exactly what they're going to do. They forget what they've just done, you see, so that they then don't know what the next move is. And this happens quite frequently.
What we say in driving is if you have good hands, quiet and soft with your horses, because once you get tense, your hands get tense, the horses feel it right away. It's like vibration going right to them. Good hands in driving is the main thing.
After 1 day of presentation and 2 days of dressage, the Dutch hold a narrow lead over the Hungarians. But the championship is still wide open, with the marathon yet to come.
That's the start, yeah.
We're going down the far side of the course.
He's way down that way, isn't it? Start here.
All the competitors must choose between the quicker, more difficult routes or the slower but easier options through the testing hazards of the marathon course.
Well, we try and build them so if they hit them, which I know some of the competitors take a great delight in doing, is that they don't give way. In other words, their carriages get bent instead. We've used big timbers and they're down 4 foot in the ground. And hopefully they're going to stand up on the day. The only thing is, if they break off at ground level, then you're in trouble. When the course is open, you start to get a bit of feedback. We take a fair amount of stick over it, but very often, in fact, the hazards I build drive a lot easier than they look, because I give people escape routes to get out.
Come that way to give yourself the swing. It's very crucial that you memorise these hazards so that you know exactly where you're going, because you have to place your horses to within an inch, really.
The one on the bank, that one will cause problems. And if they do get their angles wrong, attacking the gates, then they are going to get into trouble, there's no doubt about that.
The competitions themselves are great fun because it's a sort of great family occasion. It's people who have a common interest in driving and in horses. We all meet together, and it's a great sort of mobile weekend party because the same people tend to meet at every competition, and people get to know each other, and it's a most entertaining way of life.
Well, it's absolutely lovely because you've got 14 nations, 14 I think it is, competing. And everybody, you know, you can walk down these boxes down here and they'll call you in and ask you for a glass of wine, and you could walk down there and by the time you got to the end you'd be drunk. I don't think there's any other sport that brings people together, you know, from all walks of life. And we've been doing it now for about 12 years, 13 years, and I've enjoyed every moment of it.
On the day of the marathon, the drivers set off at intervals on an 18-mile journey along roads and tracks and across country. The course is divided into 5 sections to be walked or trotted at set average speeds. Cantering or galloping are not allowed, except within the hazards, and a referee sits beside the driver, giving penalty points for any break of pace. Further down the course, the first competitor is already tackling the water hazard.
I love a marathon. You know, to me, that's what it's all about. That's the most enjoyable part. It's probably the only part where you're not suffering from nerves. It's just a wonderful feeling, like, you know, let's get out there and enjoy the drive.
Laszlo Juhas is finishing the fast trotting section. At over 12 miles an hour, this is only just possible without incurring penalties for exceeding the time allowed. The marathon is a test of endurance as well as skill. If the horses are not at the peak of fitness, they'll be too tired after the roads and tracks to negotiate the final hazards.
Well, we started on the marathon and the horses were full of beans, especially the stallion, and he was on springs, you know. And about 3 parts around section A, he started to sweat, which was unusual because he never sweats. And I said to him, groom, I said, it's not right, that horse. I could feel, you know, when you drive horses every day, you can feel when they're not right. And when we got to the end of the walk, he was distressed. And I called the vet up to have a look at him, and he's got colic.
We always wind up taking the shortcuts. I'm not a crasher or a banger or anything like that. It's just that we wind up where we have to go those short ways, and sometimes it pays off, sometimes it doesn't.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, you're off!
The walk sections must be driven at nearly 5 miles an hour, a fast walk for some breeds of horse.
In the past, people drove high-stepping horses. It wasn't for sure, this was a safety factor. Horses that picked the knees up didn't trip.
This is the way how they sprung.
A lot of people, myself included, we were experimenting, crossing different breeds, trying to get a perfect competition driving horse, one that has elegance and paces to do dressage, yet still has stamina and strength to do a marathon.
Le deuxième obstacle, avec 1 minute, 25 secondes, ça fait 12,2 points de pénalité.
Prince Philip, with his horses going well, approaches the end of the course.
The horses have to cooperate. You have to know what they're expected to do. It's not like a motor car. You can't sort of press buttons and turn handles. They have to rely on you, and you have to rely on them. So there's a lot of compatibility about it. And that can only come through getting to know them as individuals. In fact, most of the time you're going around psychoanalyzing each horse in turn, because one horse doesn't like blue plastic, and another one doesn't like waving branches, another one doesn't like pigs, and another one doesn't like trees. And so you constantly have to sort of think, well, now what's going to happen next? you've got to understand the mentality and the characteristics of each of the horses in your team.
I think we've now got to a stage where we are driving literally miniature tanks with aluminium wheels or steel wheels and all steel chassis and frames for strength. I think we might see a change in the rules to stop these people who are crashing, literally smashing their way through the obstacle.
I don't have as much strength as some drivers do, particularly some of the younger men have a good deal more strength. So I have to rely on the horses having learned to do what I tell them to do with my voice as well as with the reins.
Every carriage must carry a navigator and a groom, who often play a vital role maintaining the stability of the carriage with their own body weight. Bill Long, with owner Finn Casperson riding as groom and navigator, comes up to the final hazard.
Meister! Come! Get out of here!
Bill comes through into third place in the marathon, only a few points behind the Dutchman. This is his best ever performance in a world championship. With Deirdre Pirrie, he takes the American team into fourth position, just within reach of a medal.
I thought the whole marathon really went well. And the horses were just working so super today. You know, it's a lucky day. It was luck. A lot of it there. And there's a couple places we could have really been stuck bad, but we got lucky. You know, but no, I really felt good about the marathon, and everything went well.
I was very pleased with the marathon. Hazards went a bit slower than I'd hoped for, but it rode very smooth. It was a nice course, fun course to drive.
Today I think it went very well for me, of course, because otherwise I wouldn't have won the competition. But the hazards weren't too difficult for us, because in Holland we are used to very tight hazards. And that's the reason I think that we Dutch people are ahead at the moment.
The pleasure for me is to get round without a disaster of any kind. If I win, it's a sort of bonus, but I suppose I'm really rather an old-fashioned amateur in that sense, that I enjoy the competition rather than the winning.
I don't just say to you, I'll give you a little...
It's a new sport, it's a small sport. And in the past, it's been like one big family. Everybody knows everybody, everybody helps everybody. And we always had parties and we had fun. But it's going to slowly change because of the sponsorship coming in. There's more money coming in. People are giving more money for carriages, they're giving more money for horses. And when this happens, then professionalism comes in and they take it more serious and they have to win. And I think we'll slowly see a lot of friendliness disappear.
The final day of the event. With the dangers of the marathon behind them, the competitors are back in the arena in full regalia for the cone driving.
It was designed originally to prove that the horses were still sound and supple after doing an 18-mile marathon to come out and be able to do the cones.
Drivers must guide their teams through pairs of cones set only slightly wider than the wheels of each carriage. The cones are made of light plastic and each has a ball balanced on top, which falls if the cone is touched to give 5 penalties.
Ten penalties on the obstacles for William Long, member of the American team. No time penalties. Takes his score up to 130.
Bill Long and Deirdre Perry both have 2 knockdowns, so the American team remain in 4th place. Laszlo Juhas drives a clear round to win the individual bronze medal, leaving 2 Dutchmen to battle for the gold and silver. There are only 4 points between these two. The first, Chardon, must now drive a clear round to secure the silver medal and to stand a chance of winning the whole event.
Very important clear round now for Iceman Chardon for the Dutch team. So he will hold on to his silver medal place. And all the pressure now on
Velstra is the last to drive. A single mistake and his teammate will win the individual gold.
first place with only 4 points in hand, so he can't knock anything down. So there we go, the gold medal winning Chad Velstra with that beautiful clear round.
But Velstra drives clear and becomes the new world 4-in-hand driving champion.
Gold medal. Membre de l'équipe hollandaise,